What's good, YouTube? We're back today with another top 5 list. You remember that article that Konami released that said mid-September they might revisit the ban list and change things up for us? Well, it's September 15th by my clock, and Fridays are very famous for releasing ban lists. So, no matter what happens with the ban list, as long as they're hitting Zoo and True Draco, I have 5 sleeper decks that I think will become much better and probably have the ability to top regionals, if not YCSs, as long as Zoo and Draco are getting hit relatively nice. But my honorable mentions are always what I start out with, and that's going to be Dark Magician and the Blue Eyes White Dragon decks. Yes, these are somewhat appealing to the casuals. They're in the Megatons now, so they're relatively budget. Blue Eyes not so much, but the Dark Magician deck definitely budget now. I would have to say, though, that the Dark Magician kind of feels like a worse version of a control deck than the Magibullets that are coming out, and that's why he's going to be in my honorable mentions here. I just don't think that they're going to compete with the meta as well as they would have, and Blue Eyes kind of got shoved off the scene by ABC before, if you recall. It was really rare that Blue Eyes would top after the introduction of ABC. They would be here and there, but not so often, and ABC was meta in Japan after their ban list, which is kind of going to be our update. Remember, we're 3 to 4 months behind Japan, if not 5 at times, so I really do feel like these two are sleeper decks in a sense, and people really want them to be good, but they're my honorable mentions for that same reason, that they're going to keep doing the same thing that they're doing. They didn't receive real buffs, and there's just better versions of what they do coming out, such as the Magibullets for Dark Magicians. But let's go ahead and get into the top 5 list, and my first choice here is going to be Infernoids. Infernoids actually has received somewhat of a buff during this Zoo Draco era, and that's being pushed out into the Megatons. Now, you're going to be using Void Imagination against extra deck monsters, sending an insane amount of things to the graveyard and summoning your Infernoid fusion, and that lets you send 3 of these to the graveyard, popping your opponent's field. Basically, you're gonna take care of 3 cards. You can target any card on the field and destroy it using when it's sent, and you can send 3 using basically Void Imagination for free at times. And this deck is completely budget right now. People are super sleeping on it. Remember Deviati being $25? You can get them for dollars right now. Decatron's fallen under $1. Everything is so cheap right now for this deck, and it's a nudge on the ban list with Grass at 2 and Snow being hit from being amazing. And there's another buff coming to this deck that actually helped it top in some Asian tournaments. Fire King Ganesh is going to be coming out for this deck as well. So with help coming on the horizon, a buff already there since Zoo and Draco have come out in some senses, and the ability perhaps to continue as a 40 card deck rather than a 60 card deck, I really have high hopes for the Infernoids, and they are truly being slept on right now. But in the number 4 slot, this is one people aren't sleeping on as much thanks to another tuber, Asian Persuasion 2008, the Cosmos. Cosmos still have their huge, big, untargetable ships, and they're just so insane. And on top of it, Full Force Virus is still going to hit many of the decks coming out in the upcoming metas. Now, Cosmos don't really struggle too badly against ABC because they can't be targeted on their big ships, and they also have 3000 attack, which threatens Dragon Buster on its own. Talking about the rest of the meta coming up, though, Spirals might have the ability to deal with Cosmos with their plus combos like crazy, but we're talking about the immediate hope of a ban list, and even with Sleeper being buffed up and having Last Resort on it, they're going to have a really hard time dealing with big untargetable ships as well. Dark Destroyer is at 3 in the OCG though, and it just doesn't seem to be doing as much as we would like it to do. But if we can set up some kind of control Cosmo, assuming Card of Demise doesn't get hit, or we can just set up different variants of Cosmo that abuse cards that we have already, I think we're going to see Cosmo surprise us time and time again, just as Asian Persuasion did with Zoo and Draco at full power. I think the decks that are coming out, while very powerful, it just deals with a lot of the meta. In the number 3 slot, this is truly a sleeper we didn't see coming back. Infernities. Infernities have been doing a bit in our meta already with Zoo there. There's a new FTK variant thanks to the degeneracy of Firewall Dragon, and I doubt we're going to see Firewall Dragon hit preemptively or early here in any way, shape, or form. So many of you guys are calling for it, and while the best deck to use Firewall Dragon may be the World Chalice, Infernities have shown that playing even through hand traps is something that they're interested in doing. Ash and Ogre don't necessarily mean game over. You like what I did there? But seriously, it's a glass cannon in some senses, but it's really gained its consistency back, and there's even help on the horizon for it. Downbeat is an OCG card that's going to be a transmodify in reverse. You're going to be able to go from a 4 down into a 3, and in this deck that means turning an Archfiend into an Infernity Necromancer, and the added bonus is that it's a spell that you can just set so that you can pendulum things out and get effects with no cards in your hand and then use it, and then continue to use that Necromancer, bring back Archfiend. So it has continued combo pieces coming that it doesn't even need. But with Amazoness Archer, it's Amazoness Archer, you're able to just go ham with Firewall loops and burn for 1200, burn for 1200. Now, unfortunately, there are cards already being sided thanks to another meta deck called Tricksters. Tricksters are on that cusp of being past tier 1.5/2 into tier 1, and they may see their way in depending on how the ban list goes. So, Hainwada's a thing, anti-burn cards are a thing, so Amazoness Archer might not do enough if it's that prevalent, but I still think the FTK version is really cool, and it's really fun to watch. I wouldn't have been playing it without my stream, and I'm really glad that I discovered how fun the deck is. I mean, it's not fun for other people when they watch you sit there and play with yourself, but it's fun for you. And in the second place, not many of you guys are going to have fond memories of this one. The Barrier Statues. The Barrier Statues actually got a buff card. Dimension Guardian, if you missed this card in the movie pack, is basically a better safe zone for this deck. Activate this card by targeting a face-up attack position monster, which is what you're going to need to do with your Barrier Statues typically. It cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. If the targeted monster leaves the field, destroy this card. Do you remember that people were playing Godarla just because this deck existed? They were like, when Barrier Statues is the strongest one, I better have an out. Barrier Statues went down the drain because of True Dracos, and even then their presence has been in the top cut very, very periodically, like once in a while. But I would have to say that with True Draco getting hit, this deck is just going to make its presence known once again. The stun variants have been waiting, and they've come back in multiple formats here. We had Performapal, full power Pepe, and this was topping at regionals, albeit, but it was still topping regionals, and I think it just has a chance again to shine. We're going to have so many special summon combo decks that one field wipe and a well-established Barrier Statue might do it, although you're going to have to find a way to Sleeper with Last Resort in the future. I think immediately after the ban list, this is one of the decks that's going to rush to the forefront of being played, and it's completely budget also. You don't have to pay much to play Stun. And my final deck, the one that I really, really see as one of the best sleeper decks that no one's talking about, mainly because it just never seemed to appear in the OCG meta, Paleozoics. Yes, and they get a buff with Mastarboy, and we get that early with our special editions. Oh, you're still going to be able to double Toad, you're still going to be able to dupe block, you've got a buff and a Link monster, we have Lost Wind, and remember, if ABC was meta in Japan, this deck hasn't been really hit at all, and it's the deck that surprised us time and time again. It stuffed Fusion Sub-Zoo with Cory Roca and managed to win a YCS. That's the most powerful variant of Zoo that existed. Full power degeneracy with Norden, and this deck stuffed it. This deck showed up ABC time and time again. Elvis Vu, one of the only ABC players that managed to push through this kind of a matchup. I definitely think you should not be sleeping on this deck. It has evolved so much since then. The Card of Demise variants, the regular variants, the 60 card mill variants. There's so many ways to play this deck, and it's insane. Yes, it got hit with grass in a sense, but you're still gonna see it doing what it does. Its stun aspects are so good, and people aren't citing Denko Sekkas now, and they certainly aren't going to just because a ban list hits. You're gonna have to have this deck do something for people to start preparing against it, and I think it is truly slept on. Nobody's talking about it. It just doesn't seem to appear in the OCG, but over here, it's a huge problem. There's a lot of really good duelists with it. Shoutouts to Michael State. Shoutouts to Deception. There's so many good duelists in the States and in Europe. Joshua Schmidt, that would definitely be able to just tear up an event and surprise everybody with it. So, what did you guys think of this list? I actually just had a huge list written down, and I felt like Minerva Sworn's not really fair to put in here because that's a deck that comes to the forefront of tops all the time. We've got, you know, True King Dinosaurs coming, Spiral coming. The Paleo really was maybe the quote-unquote easiest call, but no one's talking about it right now. Everyone's like focusing on ABC, Pendulum Magicians, and what's in the OCG pie charts, and I felt like this was a truly slept-on deck. But is there any deck I missed that you guys think I'm sleeping on and everyone else is sleeping on? Should Dark Magician or Blue Eyes been in that 5th slot over Infernoids, which is super budget right now? I really enjoy looking at decks, and I was just up late talking with Cosmo, bouncing my head off of this video, and like, I was like, we gotta figure this out. We gotta figure out what the best sleepers are. And Barrier Statues, Paleozoics, there's so many that are gonna come out once True Dracos get wrangled up a little and Zoo goes on the back into non-existence. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this one, and I really did enjoy making it.